Hey there, I'm Pete Townsend, and this is Money Never Sleeps. We look inside the minds of entrepreneurs and at the crossover of startups, enterprise, finance, technology, and life as we know it. This episode of Money Never Sleeps is sponsored by Pat FinTech, the training partner that demystifies fintech and digital finance for financial services professionals. On the show this week, we've got Barry Darmody.
Hi, I'm Barry Darmody, and I'm CEO of Search4Less and Enki.
Sharing his story on the life experiences that were the catalyst for him becoming a startup founder, getting the Search4Less product to market in the early days, keeping the faith through the lean years, making yourself expendable through building a great team, and connecting the dots of life through his passion for problem solving. All right here on Money Never Sleeps. In the run-up to you founding your first startup, tell me about what were some of the formative experiences from your time with IFG to Roachford Brady to MDA and then back to IFG that were the catalyst for you kind of saying, all right, I'm just going to do this?
Sure. So I've been lucky enough in my career that most of the business I've been involved in, I was involved in early stage. So when I joined IFG in 96, I joined a company called Lawlink. I was a third employee. It was a very innovative product that tried to do a lot of what I do today. Just it was way ahead of its time. It was 1996, and we were trying to sell an online information platform. And the challenges we encountered were solicitors didn't have internet. So we had to provide the internet. We had to provide the connection, the modem, the computer in a lot of cases.
Wow.
So it was just way ahead of its time. It was a great product. It was a great idea. And there was very strong leadership there. But FG is a financial services company, and this was their dot-com play. So in 2001, 2002, when the dot-com bust happened, they kind of lost interest in driving that business. And a lot of leadership actually left. And I was left there with an option of maybe going back into mainstream employment or giving it a go for 6 months. And I didn't like the idea of going back into mainstream employment, mainly because I was probably being paid more than I was worth in mainstream employment where I was. So I decided to give it a go for 6 months, and we rationalized the business. We actually discontinued the side of the business that I was working in, which was the consultancy side, which funnily enough was the cash cow for the business. And I focused on the information products. And at the time, there was a good few law search firms in Dublin. And we spoke to Roachford Brady, who were just after being taken over by an entrepreneur called Philip Grant. And he was looking at developing out the Roachford Brady proposition. So he and I met. He bought the business, or 75% stake in the business, from IFG, and part of the deal was I went with it. So we joined Roachford Brady, and that was a very clerical organization. So there was a lot of paperwork going on there. There was 60 or 70 staff delivering closing searches, which conveyance searches every day. And then we had this technology business. So my goals there were to kind of bring the technology to the workflow within the Roachford Brady day-to-day operations, which we did. But on top of that, we acquired a few law searches around Dublin that were sort of family owned, but they were, coming to end of life in terms of the family ownership. So we acquired a few of those, we integrated them, and we grew market share through that. And then in 2006, we bought two businesses in Northern Ireland from both sides of the divide, and we amalgamated them, which is probably one of the most rewarding experiences of my career, kind of overseeing that, the joining of those two businesses and overcoming quite a few challenges, not just HR related. But it was a very, very rewarding experience. And we modernized those two businesses. That became Lawlink UK. It's still in existence today.
Can I say that I remember this?
Sure, yeah.
No, I do remember this. I remember you telling me about the experience of bringing together businesses from both sides of that divide in Northern Ireland.
Yeah, it was a scary thing. The very first day I went up there, I was petrified, I must admit, about the reaction I would get. This was the first time we brought the two businesses from their independent offices and put them into one office.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember going up in the train thinking, what am I going to experience here? And I arrived and got into the office, and I just ran for the management office. I just sat at my desk and went, what am I going to do? How am I going to engage these people? And there was a deathly silence. in the place. And I thought it was because of me, but it was actually, they were the conditions they worked under. And I kind of went out, and these are all young, early 20s workers and, young people. And I kind of went, "Do you guys not have a radio here?" And the response was, "Oh, we don't really, we're not really allowed to use a radio."
Right.
And I ran around to Argos, spent £11 on a radio, brought it
Wow.
back, tuned in Today FM because it was the only channel I knew I could get or how to get. And I said, "Look, the rule is whoever's in first chooses the station." And that's been a rule that we've had in all of the businesses I've run since. So there's no rowing about the radio station every day. Whoever's in first chooses, and that's it.
Great.
So I spent 3 weeks modernizing that business. And as I say, we did team building exercises and we did a lot of just trying to break down the barriers. And, by and large, by the end of the 3 weeks, we'd gone from a very, very paper-based system to fully automated, hired a manager up there to kind of help us run the business. And I believe she's still there.
Awesome.
So that was 2008. So she got a job out of that in the end.
Through the years, at one point, I remember you saying something about the number of businesses that you had integrated or that had been acquired during those first 7-8 years of this century. Buying businesses, but driving that experience into how you think about your own startup. That must have been quite helpful.
I certainly learned a lot through the due diligence phase at that time, certainly buying the businesses and negotiating. I was party to all of those discussions. The empathy that's required to convince the vendor that, their child is going to be looked after and their reputation is going to be remain intact. And they were important things when we were making these acquisitions, because a lot of these businesses were personal to the owners, particularly in Northern Ireland. The two owners, they struggled with the thoughts of getting out, and they just knew the timing was right. There was a lot of consolidation happening in the UK at the time. There was the Home Information Pack was an initiative that the Tory government had been pushing in terms of the vendor being responsible for the information in a conveyance, and the purchaser being able to rely on that. So I got a huge amount of experience at the time being involved in that initiative and understanding it. And that came about because in 2006, we entered into negotiations with MDA, which is a multinational firm based out of Vancouver, who were buying up property information companies all over Europe. And they had floated on the stock exchange on the back of their space missions business, which was that they built the Canada arm, which is the arm that comes out of the old space shuttle. And they moved into building satellites, and then they saw a correlation between selling satellite images and owning the land information. And they had a big business in the US where they were able to do loss adjustment calculations on the back of location. So if building was destroyed in a tornado, they could work out based on localized information what the cost of rebuild was. And they were very big in that space with a company called DataQuick. They bought a few businesses in the UK and in Germany. And one of the businesses they bought in the UK was a company called Miller Bryce, which is the biggest law search company in Scotland. And Miller Bryce had a reputation at the time for kind of being regarded as the Kleenex of law searching. So, if you didn't say go and get the closing search, you said go and get the Miller Bryce search. So they were very strategic in the acquisitions they were making. And then they came along and they targeted Roger Brady. We did a deal. I became CEO of Roger Brady, and I reported into MDA. Initially, they were going to get us to report into Miller Bryce, but they changed strategy primarily because our technology was more advanced, and they felt it'd be counterproductive for us to kind of report in. They might lose that secret sauce that they already had and they had acquired through us, because we were probably the largest law search firm at the time, and we had kind of grown our market share but twofold, but we had reduced our overheads through automation by a factor of 4. So it was a good business model, and through acquisition, we grew rapidly. And I entered into that earnout. It was a 2-year earnout, and at the end of the earnout, I had a choice. And my family was quite young, and I'd worked really hard during the earnout. I'd been in Vancouver for a week, once every 6 weeks. And, there was a couple of milestones that I missed. I remember when we were working on the deal, the morning of my second son's christening, I was working, and, so that wasn't a great work-life balance. So I worked really hard for the 2 years, and towards the end, MDA were kind of indicating that the progression for me was UK and ultimately Vancouver. This was a huge organization, $1 billion turnover.
Oh, yeah.
And it was a massive experience for me because I learned how multinationals work, and I learned how to navigate the bureaucracy, and I learned how to navigate, decision making. I mean, we had a situation where we were trying to rent a room in Belfast. I think it was like £20,000 a year.
Right.
And there was 9 levels of signing authority for that lease.
Wow.
And the estate agent in Belfast is looking at me kind of going, what's this all about, Barry? Like, why do we have this complication? I'm like, well, I don't know. I don't know why this $20,000
the procurement cycles of MNCs.
Yeah. So all of that stuff, like I just I sucked up, and I really kind of enjoyed learning how those organizations work. But the reality was the travel didn't appeal. International travel is great crack the first 4 times.
No, I remember that period as well that you were going through, and on the airplane all the time.
Yeah, and you're trying to collect your air miles, and then it's weird stuff. It's weird stuff how it works, and how people get obsessed with air miles and what flights, what aircraft they're on, and will I get bumped up to business class? And it was just horrendous stuff that didn't really float my boat in the end. And I got an opportunity to go back to IFG. They were one of our biggest clients in Rochester Brady. So I'd maintained relationships there. But the timing of that move was shocking. I remember one of the first things it did, IFG had a very good deal with a number of lenders around town where they were packaging remortgage services. And I remember I went into one of the lenders and I was kind of saying, we need to renegotiate the price here because we're kind of below cost selling. And they kind of went, well, we're giving you volume. And I said, yeah, but I think everybody should be paying what it costs at the very minimum, So they didn't react very well to that negotiation tactic. But 6 weeks later, the whole market collapsed.
No, I remember back at that time, you told us, you said, Pete, if there's any time in history in Ireland that you don't want to buy a house, it is right now. And what did I do?
You went and bought a house.
I bought a house. Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, it was bananas at the time. I couldn't understand it, And I mean, the numbers didn't add up, and the market collapsed. And I went in to kind of modernize a few of the IFG mortgage-related businesses to going into crisis management, to going into rationalizing a business, to going into managing shareholder relations, because GE were a 50% shareholder in the business, and all of that stuff. Now, my experience, luckily at the time, helped a great deal, but all of that stuff was complicated. It wasn't what I wanted to do with life. I wanted to go out and build products and make processes better. Use my skill set to make life easier for people, to be more efficient in delivering the end product. But that was 2 or 3 years of hell, really. It was difficult, and it was hard. Like, one of the first things I did when I joined IFG was I met every single member of staff reporting into my division one-on-one. And there was no agenda. It was just tell me what you think of this business. And it took 3 weeks, and it was a very, very informative process. At the time, it was a good process. They hadn't seen anything like that. And you just get a sense of, well, what's working, what's not working in the business. And then, 3 or 4 months later, I'm standing up and I'm saying, hey, we've got to remove some jobs here. It was difficult. That's never an easy thing to do. And it wasn't something that I forget. It's, you always remember these things, that they're hard things to do. So one of the things, in order to try and make the best of a bad situation, was we decided to set up Search4Less. And at the time, we set it up in Dingle. And the reason we chose Dingle was there was call center facilities there. Uthras Nagil had a initiative where if you brought industry to the area, you could avail of grants. They had lost a big contractor that year which had devastated the region all along the West Coast. And, I'm from Kerry, and I wanted to get and give a little bit back. So we chose that as the location. The facilities were perfect. We had an air-conditioned server room, which is probably the only air-conditioned server room on the Dingle Peninsula, in which we subsequently sublet, but we let rack space to kind of cover our costs. And, the facilities were good. The staff were good. We also sold insurance products, Oscailga, which I was personally very proud of. And that is something fascinating to experience when you walk onto the sales floor. And
I didn't know
people
that.
Conversing. Yeah, so one of the initiatives of the Uthras grants is that you would revive the language, and the language would play an important role in your business model. We were capable of selling insurance products via Oscailga. And that was great.
Just so everyone knows, Escuelga, for those listening in the US, is the Irish language, or Gaelic, as it may be referred to in the United States of America.
Correct, yes, Gaelic. And we, we did that from startup. It was a great experience again. And one of the things that I learned through that experience was that, we brought a lot of technology, open source technology to the equation. And as you know, failure is an orphan and success is many fathers. And when the business started to kind of develop a little bit of success, it got a bit of interest from peers who kind of wanted to help with maybe the future direction of the business. And that was something that I felt, I've been around the block now. I've done this a few times, and maybe it's time I did it for myself. And that was the catalyst. I really enjoyed my time in Dingle, but I felt that, particularly when the help came along, I felt that I was better off if I did the next thing on my own and for myself and for my family. So I made the decision. I had always resisted the urge to set up something on my own, primarily because I suppose I felt I had a duty to provide at home, and the conditions were never really right. But this particular year, I had an idea. One of the businesses we sold to Roger Brady back in 2002 was a business called Company Information Direct, and it's still going, and it was the first version of Search4Less. I developed that system with a couple of other guys from startup. It does a lot of what Search4Less does, and I would say now it kind of Search4Less. We've learned from all the mistakes that we made on that particular product, and we got it away. But the real catalyst was I use that information, that company information, on a regular basis in business, and I use it in ways that it probably doesn't get used. So, for example, I would use it for networking. I would learn more from pulling down a set of accounts or looking at a director's past history than you would get on LinkedIn, or you find out, I don't know, a lot about people when you use the service. And that's what I used to use company data for. And one of the things that was consistent in 2011, which was the year I decided, right, I'm going to do this myself, was that every Monday morning when my account in my provider got down to below 10 euro, I'd get a phone call. So I get a phone call, hey, you need to top up your account, you're below. I was going, you know what, I only topped it up about 6 weeks ago. This is ridiculous. I started to think, nothing has really changed in this industry since I left. I didn't feel I had any obligation to MDA at this stage on any non-competes or anything. So I kind of went, you know what, CID is still the same. The main competitor everybody talks about and knows about is still the same. There's lots of opportunities here to actually do it better. And the one thing that struck me at the time was that when we sold CID to Roger Brady and we sold it again to MDA 4 years apart, during due diligence, I realized the average income per customer was the same. And that's where I came up with my price point. And I went, we can do this. We can do it better. We can do an all-in model, and you're not worried about having to top up your account, or you're not going to get that phone call anymore. And that's how Search4Less was born. And then we started to think about how can we make it better. It's happened in the industry, and we found out things like the CRO had APIs that nobody was really availing of, and we started to connect to those APIs, which meant we were getting the information in real time. And we built this product. I designed it. I hired a guy to help me develop it, and I subsequently bought him out of the business. He did it on a part equity, part salary basis originally, and Search4Less was born.
So tell us about Search4Less and what it is.
So Search4Less is an online company information platform that allows users to access any publicly available information about directors, shareholders, and companies and businesses. So anything that's publicly available, good, bad, or indifferent, appears on the platform. We aggregate the data. We package it in such a way that it's easy to navigate. We produce reports, and we do it for a fixed annual fee. The speed of the service was the key thing. And initially, when I designed it and we were figuring out, well, how are we going to present this? How are we going to make it easy to understand, easy to use? We had an idea that, you know what, the market is well served by the incumbents. There's really no point in trying to disrupt. And my idea was, look, we'll go out, we'll pitch it at 150 euro. We'll try and mop up 5,000 SMEs, and we live happily ever after. And the idea was that, well, look, big businesses using this, financial service providers using this, business service providers using this information. Why can't SMEs use it? And that was the idea. That was the initial plan. And what happened was I showed it to an accountant in town called Brian Murphy. I was hiding out in his attic. I hope he doesn't mind me name dropping him.
Yeah.
And he came up and he said, "Hey, what are you doing here?" And I said, I'm developing this product. And he had a look and he said, "Can I have access?" And I said, "Sure." 2 hours later, he came up to the office again and he said, "Well, I'm going to say two things to you. The first thing he said is, you have really got something here. This is very, very good. And the second thing I'm going to say to you is, it's too cheap."
Okay.
And we rowed about that for a while, and he felt I should go to 195. So eventually I conceded the point. Now, of course, I was being precious and saying, "Oh, I really thought about this €150 price."
How did you come up with the
Well, you
150?
see, originally when we did the due diligence, that was the average income per customer on CID. So I just thought, yeah, that has to be the number. Like if we go out with this. So from there, it was introduced to a networking group. And, there was 11 different accountancy firms at that networking group. All 11 signed up with us pretty quickly after that. And Grant Thornton became the first sort of top tier accountancy firm that signed up, and they presented us with our first kind of real dilemma in the first 3 weeks, which was, we're going to go with this, but we need you to sign up 500 users. And we kind of went, how are we going to sign up 500 users? Just me and a developer here. We're actually at the Web Summit. So we needed to figure out how we're going to do that quick, smart. So we came up with the universal sign up that's there now. We invite everybody by email. They get a link, and that's it. We don't have any admin. That's how we did it. So we pushed the problem back to the user, and that is how everybody signs up. And it just went on from there.
Kind of true SaaS, right?
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Is that you're up there, you're online, obviously there's a whole way to direct potential users, potential corporates to your website. But then once they're on, it's completely self-service.
100%. And the key thing for us at this point was, we didn't really understand that. And we were just making it up as we went along. But what I understood was that if we listen to our customers, we're going to be successful here. And we didn't anticipate the reaction that we got from the likes of Grant Thornton or Brian Murphy and Summers Murphy Earl. And that kind of caught us by surprise. We kind of reacted to that very, very quickly and changed the business model a little bit, added in extra reports that they had requested, particularly Grant Thornton. And we evolved kind of with them, but they became great referrers. Like this became the new kid on the block, and everybody could see the value add. And when people started to use it, they could see, wow, this is impressive. And the product just kicked off from there. And I would reckon about half of the clients that we sign up are referred by somebody else. And we're even seeing trends now where people have moved between firms or moved to new firms. And the first thing to do is, what do you mean you don't have Search4Less? We need to have this. This is an essential tool. And it just grows from there. And we've 19 top 20 accountancy firms now. We've got, I think, 5 of the top 7 in law firms. We've most of the banks at this stage. We've started to move this year into we've an API proposition now as well, and that's becoming fairly busy for us now. We've a couple of firms coming in from the UK following Brexit, a couple of Canadian firms now taking a look at us as well in terms of the APIs and how to access the data. And we're very involved in some of the bigger RegTech companies and AML companies as well, are kind of using our data. So we've evolved.
You really have. No, I mean, and just bringing it back to that company information data going back to 2002. Like you said, that problem's always been there. That whether it's law firms, accountants, banks, anybody that needs information on the companies that they are bringing in as their customers, or those that are, I won't even try to understand the legal side of it, right? For how much information you actually need to get. But, that problem's always been there, but the technology at your disposal to use just keeps getting better and better through the years to make things easier for customers, for corporates, for businesses to get company information.
Yeah, absolutely. And Fire.com are one company that have used us since they started their own proposition. And, they've been very innovative. They use our data for account sign up. They use our Irish and UK data, in fact, for account sign up. But we haven't seen that replicate across other Irish banks. We're seeing it with the likes of Revolut and N26 now. They have fairly slick onboarding systems. But, and I know you've had this experience, but when it goes wrong, oh my God, does it go wrong?
It does.
So enough said about that one. But we're seeing that A lot of AI now is coming at us requesting this data. People are doing more sector analysis. We're doing a lot of data on that side. And because we've enhanced the CRO data with other bits of information like judgments and financial information, we're providing, when we've been doing it for 5 or 6 years, we're providing a really strong data set. We've just started a version 2 build about 4 weeks ago, where, on the back of the CRO digital transformation, which is ongoing, we're seeing a lot of opportunity here to take it to the next level and to develop further. And this, again, goes back to the key of our growth and our success, which is we listen to our clients. And I think one of the most rewarding things, and we get this feedback from clients from time to time, is actually when they make a suggestion, we react to it, we weigh it up, and if it's a good suggestion, we'll deploy it. And we get a lot of positive feedback because of that. And generally, we find that particular product, Search4Less, it looks after itself. It is truly software as a service. And we started just now to go back to the SMEs to say, look, this is data you need to be using in your day-to-day. And, we have a whole story around why SMEs should be using this in all of their interactions with customers, with creditors, with competitors. We're really trying to focus on how do we make it easier for them to engage with the data.
Yeah, there are so many different use cases for Search4Less, in terms of a project I was working on, like you said, to figure out a sector and what's going on there. And I know I introduced you to somebody who said, listen, it'd be great if we could have this API feed for this. And it's wonderful that you're doing that now. How many markets are you covering with Search4Less? How many different countries are you covering now?
We've got the full world data set, but we don't really push that. We're very strong in Ireland and the UK. What we find very often is that somebody is looking for a set of accounts in France, and you give them a set of accounts from the French register, and the first thing they say, well, they're not translated. Well, that's because they're in French. And, because the Irish data is so good, we find the expectation is that all other jurisdictions will be the same. And, we try to tease out with people what they need the data for, what they actually need. And very often all they need is a certificate of good standing, which we can get by going to the local register and give them a bonded search that says, we've searched this particular register on such and such a date, and this company exists, it's a good standing. And that tends to satisfy most use cases. Because very often, like you can absolutely get a set of French accounts translated into English, but it's going to cost like 800 quid.
And there are companies that do that.
Yeah. And Google Translate will probably do a pretty good job, but that's not something that you'd run into the high court with and go, hey, check this out. Yeah. So there's all of these kind of complications around providing international data. And we use the big guys as well. We've access and we have relationships with the likes of Dun & Bradstreet and Experian. But again, the data is only as good as what the database has. So very often you might spend 100 quid on a Dun & Bradstreet report, and they can only give you what's in that jurisdiction, and it might not meet expectations. So there's just, we've taken a position on that as a service to say, look, we're expert. We have agents all over the world. We can get you what you want, but let's have a conversation first about what you want and why you want it, and see what's the best way to get it to you without costing the earth. And that tends to work really well for us. But we've huge plans with the UK data. A lot of pressure from existing customers to try and give their peer firms in the UK the same sort of service that they get here in Ireland. We've shied away from it before now because there's a couple of good incumbents there. There was one company that started out around the same time of us, Doodle. They've gone through a series of funding, and I always felt, they've got big, deep pockets. I don't want to compete there. I don't want to go over to the UK and blow the success I've had on a white elephant chase. So I took my time and went, look, let's see how we can bring a different product to the market, and we think we've figured that out finally. And I believe that with the version 2 that we're doing for Ireland, we can easily port that to the UK, and hopefully we'll have success there.
This episode of Money Never Sleeps is sponsored by Pat FinTech, demystifying fintech and digital finance for financial services professionals. Pat FinTech enable financial services professionals to transform their capabilities into the digital age with dedicated virtual training programs geared towards those that can develop, deliver, and monitor optimally customized user experiences balanced by appropriate governance, control, and oversight. To learn more about Pat FinTech, go to moneyneversleeps.ie/PAT-FinTech. And how do you balance, obviously, this opportunity you've built a great platform, you've scaled it locally in your home country, you're looking at the next country, right? You're not looking at the next country, but you're
Mm.
getting strong demand from from your current customers, like you said, to be able to open up this type of experience to their UK entities. How do you balance this opportunity to go, well, yeah, you know what? We'll expand into the UK, perhaps through a deal and buying a huge amount of data, we could tackle the US, right? How do you balance that with some of the original ideas that got you to launch Search4Less in the first place, which is being local and being here? You've got these perhaps a global ambition tempered by the family man.
I guess that the one thing that has changed is that I've built a pretty strong team.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just me. And I have found that I'm sort of surplus to requirements in most days in the office.
That's nice.
Yeah. So I'm trying to find my new destiny or my new journey. And, I'm the overflow guy. So if something is going wrong, I've developed technical skills over the last few years as well. So I released my first software patch from start to finish there a couple of weeks ago. Yeah.
Congratulations.
So I was pretty proud of myself. Now, when I said to the developers it took me 4 hours, they reckon it would take them 15 minutes. So, maybe I was being a bit too pedantic with the patch, but anyway, it's something I learned. So where I found myself in the business now is kind of going from division to division, making sure that we're optimal in everything we're doing, and just letting the team then kind of get on with it. And over the last 6 months, I'm finding I'm spending more and more time thinking about new product ideas, which is where I want to be, and working out how we're going to develop those. So we've just started hiring developers and freelancers, and I'm starting to kind of focus on that side. And then I think on the distribution side, a couple of years ago, I hired Carmel Nielsen, who has worked with me since the Lawlink days in 1996. So she's kind of worked with me in different businesses. And after Carmel came on board, bearing in mind we're going 7 or 8 years now, the revenue just doubled in the first 12 months of her being on board with us.
Wow.
So I realized, as opposed to me kind of running around, isn't it great? Brought in a professional business development person and the success is there. I don't know if I would go further myself than the UK. And we get a lot of queries for information from the US. And the reality about the US is that most companies incorporate in Delaware. It's very light touch in terms of the information that you can get, and you can go to the state departments and all that kind of stuff. But it's so disparate. And Dun & Bradstreet and Experian have a real stranglehold on the value add in that space, or the perceived value add in that space. So it's a difficult one to get into. Now, we cooperate, or we are co-competitors with Dun & Bradstreet and Experian here in the Irish market and the UK market, and the relationship is pretty good. But, I think as we develop our product offering, we're probably going to have to figure out where our place is in that market. Like, we could go all the way up to credit and personal credit, but you might bite the hand that feeds you in terms of some of the data feeds. So we've good collaboration going on at the moment. And for me, the eyes are certainly on the UK, probably not further afield. And that's something I think that I have a bit of experience with. We would probably try and solve the distribution problem over there. But I would anticipate that because of the client base that we have here, that the referrals would probably flow. I think we'd have a ready-made market, if you know what I mean. We could probably manage it pretty well and keep the balance going,
Okay. I get it. And I kind of just thinking more deeply about this and knowing you, Barry, and that, one of the phrases that keeps coming to mind a lot over the last couple of months with a few things I've been working on is solving adjacent problems. And this was Jason Bates, who was one of the former founders of Monzo. And I spent a bit of time with him back in 2017, 2018 with 11FS. And it just rubbed off on me, right? And that it's taking this whole Eric Rice lean startup model of building a product, getting it into your customer's hands as quickly as possible, and getting all that customer feedback. And like you said, you get an idea from a customer, you think about it, you weigh it up, and you know what? You deploy it in a few days, right? Yeah. And you get that going. And then you try to figure out through getting closer to those customers, what are the other problems, the adjacent problems that you can solve? Kind of weighing all this up. Knowing you, like I said, I kind of see you as being far more interested in solving adjacent problems for your customers rather than going out and building a global behemoth here. right?
Yeah, yeah. So we've got a couple of new products that we're looking at, and we decided to stay with the 4Less family. So one of them is Start4Less, which is an incorporations platform, which makes it easy for end users and practitioners, professional practitioners, to incorporate companies through data aggregation, which we can achieve using Search4Less data. And it just reduces a lot of steps that you'd have to follow by engaging directly with the CRO. And the most exciting product that we have, which is about to launch in the next few weeks, is HRM4Less.
Okay.
And following COVID, consequences of COVID, particularly for an SME like us, we were all very good at the first phase, keeping in touch with the staff and doing the Zoom calls, but people are so fatigued with it that I started to worry about, what have we lost here and all? And are we properly organized in terms of our policies and in terms of our procedures and safety for staff, and what are the new rules? And I kind of went, you know what, I'm normally pretty good at this stuff, but this stuff is moving so quickly and changing so fast that I became a bit concerned with the whole thing. And I said, there must be thousands of businesses out here worried about this whole space. So we designed HRM4Less, and it's a straightforward platform. Again, it's a fixed price service where you pay your annual sub. And at the very minimum, the very entry level product is a employee handbook, which will have all of the appropriate policies in place for working from home, for health and safety in the office, to make sure that you have all of the appropriate documentation in place. But it also records employee interaction. So if you issue a new policy, the system will record whether the employee has read the policy, whether they've accepted the policy, and then if they haven't, or if they have, it'll guide the business owner through what actions they need to take to make sure the policy is understood. By and large, we have 6 or 7 similar products that are in design that we're trying to roll out with this 4Less family, and we're trying to decide whether they belong in the SME environment or whether they belong in the professional service provider environment. Professional service providers have been very good to us, and the amount of referrals we get from them, we're really trying to solve problems for them, particularly on the accountancy side, the COSEC side, help them with their workflows and try and improve their efficiencies through technology. And that's where we'll launch Start4Less, and there's a couple of more like that coming down the tracks.
All right, interesting. Think about this whole journey, Barry. One of the things you said to me in 2016 when I was launching my business was, Pete, it's going to take you twice as long to hit the targets you think you're going to hit, and it's going to cost you twice as much to get there. You kind of dance through those 9 years, right, between launching Search4Less and now. And, obviously you've built a successful business to this stage, but it wasn't an easy road.
No. So we bootstrapped. And when I say we, me and my wife, I think she suffered the most. It was very difficult. The first 3 years were very difficult. There was 2 occasions where I didn't have enough money to pay staff, and I had to ask staff to wait a day or two until some checks came in. And they were difficult times. And I always checked myself at those times to, you're going to just remember this. When you're successful, you must remember this. Human nature is to forget pain, but they were difficult times. We got through them. It certainly didn't happen as quickly as I thought. I thought within a year I'd have 5,000 SMEs signed up to Search4Less, and I'd be kicking back, watching my kids grow up on the sidelines, shouting and roaring at them. Didn't happen like that. Nonetheless, we're in a phase now in the business where we're trying to figure out the next growth phase. And one of the things I've identified is I'm very, very strong at agile startup, leading by example. We're at a point now where I got to step back and let the culture evolve, and let the next generation of managers come in and put their footprint on the business. And in that, I've been very lucky with the people that I have. As I mentioned Carmel earlier on, Nicola's been with me again since the Roger Brady days. Cleena joined us as when we set up the company 7 or 8 years ago, and she's grown from college graduate into operations director. And it's becoming their business every day as we grow. I'm not involved in the day-to-day as much as I used to be anymore. As I say, I'm the utilitarian guy that they go to if there's something done that's surplus to everybody else. On the day, the team, we've been very lucky with the team. We've had a high retention rate with staff. And, I remember in the early days, I caught one person leaving at around 4 o'clock one day. She wasn't expecting me back at the office. And the following day, I sat down with her and I said, hey, I can't afford you to take the piss here. I need you to work. If you don't want to work, no problem, because she was very good. I had a straight conversation with her, and the next day she came in and she says, look, I don't want to take the piss out of you. I love working here, but I'm just bored with it, so I'm going to go on and do something else. And I thought, you know what? I learned a lesson there. She learned a lesson there. The key thing for me was I was straight with her. I acted quickly. And I'd like to think that everybody who works within our organization would say that about us, that we're an honest organization, we're candid, we're transparent, we put our hands up when we get it wrong, and we lead by example. But most importantly, we back each other, and we're a good team. And I wouldn't be anywhere today without that team, and that's a critical thing for me. There's a lot of luck involved in this story, but the key thing for me was getting those people to trust that I knew what I was doing and that this was going to come good. And none of those people, Carmel, Nicola, Kleena, key people today, none of those people were overpaid when they joined. In fact, a lot of them probably took pay cuts to come and help me with this journey. I believe we've addressed that now, and everybody is appropriately compensated. We're on a new phase in the business, as I said. And a critical thing for me is realizing the startup phase is probably coming to an end. So I'm going to go off and do what I enjoy doing, which is building new products. And hopefully the business is strong enough. And I believe it is, because we didn't have explosive growth. We certainly have had high growth in the last 2 years, but it was slow and steady for the first 5 or 6 years. And then, the last couple of years with our new product Enki, it kind of took off a bit, and we've got a lot of innovation in that particular space. But when I look at my peer firms that started up around the same time we started up, I went to the Web Summit and I thought Speed Network was meeting an angel. So I was very apprehensive.
Right.
I was very apprehensive about talking to anybody about my great idea when it was actually just speed networking.
What year was that?
In 2012.
Okay.
But the other thing is, you're queuing up to meet these angels, and some of them are younger than you, and you're like the old geezer at the back of the queue there, and all the kids are up there getting their pitch it, and kind of going, I look like a grandfather in this environment. So there was lots of learnings along the way. And I guess the point I'm making is that we didn't try and grow too quickly. We didn't overpromise and underdeliver. And I think we're better for it today. We took it steady and we got to where we are. And there isn't a day I wake up and I go, geez, I hope there's no go wrong today, because I'm so grateful for where we are. But I know now that the business is in good hands, and that doesn't necessarily mean my hands. It's in all of our hands, and we're all capable and we're all good at what we do individually.
All right. And if there's going to be one thing that could happen over the next few years that could make the difference between success and utter failure, what do you think it would be?
I'm always worried about legislative change and plan. Somebody might in some office might just go, you know what, we don't need law searching and the whole conveyancing process. But we carry out a planning search for every conveyance that takes place that we get on our there's 56 things we check for a planning search for a property. It's complicated, and if we get one of them wrong, it could be fatal for the purchase of the property or down the line. And that's always something that, I like to tell people, because we try and do it better than everybody else, and we try and do it more thoroughly than everybody else. And that's not to say that our competitors don't do it thoroughly. It's to say that we're trying to push we're trying to raise the bar on this stuff. And
I get that. And it's like, if you see a process that doesn't work especially well, or that there's some gaps in it because either the technology's old school or the approach that people are taking aren't the best. But then if you can go all the way down through the entire process and say, how are we going to wrap technology around every single step along the way? You've kind of deconstructed that completely. And you know every single gap and every single hole. And then by trying to use technology to solve that problem, you know what? If you have to go offline with something, the problem hasn't been solved, right?
Yeah.
So just by that focus and that discipline to get down to every single key part of the process, you are truly improving it by wrapping technology around it, if it is so possible to do it.
And that's the key thing. And, that's what keeps us awake at night. That's what we want to achieve. And the worst thing that can happen is somebody might go, we don't need this anymore. This isn't useful. And all of a sudden, the requirement is gone. Probably won't happen in my lifetime. There's a lot of road ahead of us in terms of modernizing conveyancing. There's definitely scope for improving that process. As I say, legislative change is probably the biggest fear I have.
Okay, I'm with you. And when you mentioned, that 2012 experience of being at Web Summit and, never taking outside capital or never taking VC money, right? Or never pursuing VC money, and just realizing that this year, I think, is the first year that you're on the FinTech Ireland map with Search4Less. And obviously the FinTech Ireland map is a one-pager with all the logos on it of all the different FinTech players in Ireland, all broken down into all the different categories, one of which is RegTech, with Search4Less right in there. What was there a wake-up point that said, I'm going to do that? Or was it, did someone find out about you and said, we got to put Search4Less up there?
Yeah, so I'm old school. So, I haven't quite figured out the social media yet.
Yeah.
So, we got a call to say, look, why aren't you guys on this? We love your product. And I said, sure, I'm happy to go on it.
Awesome.
But I need to get better at that stuff. I probably need to hire somebody that's good at that stuff.
Yeah. I'll let you know if I know somebody.
But that's the limitation. We just need to get better at that stuff, self-promotion. We can't do it under the radar.
There's something to be said for building a successful business without figuring out social media.
Yeah.
Right? Or sorry, let me say this a bit differently. Maybe I should
stop being so personal about it and just get on with it.
When you got a product that sells itself, what the hell do you need Twitter for, right?
Yeah.
So
true.
And there's a number of conversations that we have lined up for this podcast with folks that have bootstrapped businesses that have built it from scratch. And it's a different approach. And there's a book out there called Small Giants, businesses that just want to be really, really good at what they do, but not turn into a global behemoth, right? That's just not their ambition. They just want to be really good at what they do.
Yeah. And it's a key thing for me as well that, we maintain the culture. We're very agile. I go back to that lease for £20,000 in Northern Ireland that needed 9 signatures. If you get too big, you just can't react to things like that. And I think that's our secret sauce, that, a customer might make a suggestion to us in the morning and it could be there by close of business tomorrow, and I like that. And that's what gets my juices flowing.
I get you. And well, listen, I definitely learned something about Barry Darmody this evening. We've been pals for nearly 20 years. I never really connected the dots between all the different stops in your career and different experiences into one story that makes a hell of a lot of sense. So eye-opening and impressive too, as well, Barry. Tell us, what's one thing that people wouldn't expect to know about you?
I'm going to probably tell you a couple of things that I'm sure some listeners who know me probably didn't know. One is, I mentioned earlier on, I'm from Kerry.
Yeah.
I was born in Dublin, but I grew up in Kerry. Kerry season ticket holder. I've got 5 brothers and 2 sisters. And about 18 months ago, I was at a business conference and he came up to me. He was the keynote speaker. He came up to me and he asked me about my arm. And I was born with one arm.
Yeah.
And he proceeded to tell me, and not a lot of people notice this because I try to conceal it. I don't want it to become a thing in business. And so he was very perceptive, and he told me that his daughter was just born with a similar defect, and he just wanted to know how I got on in life. And I realized then, because I've never been able to kind of put my finger on why I think the way I think. And I texted my dad and my mom and I said, hey, you know what? Thanks for just letting me be, and my siblings. They never treated me any differently because I've only got one arm. In fact, if anything, they just said, get on with it. Yeah. And that was the upbringing I had. And that's, for me, is the essence of who I am and how I think.
Totally. I totally see that.
That's it. That's the one thing.
That is the one thing. No, that makes so much sense. Yeah. And over the years, kind of getting my head around that's deep. So awesome. Well, Barry, thanks so much. God's honest truth, it's been a fantastic conversation. Really was looking forward to doing this tonight, and you hit the ball out of the park.
Thanks, Fitz. A bit of pleasure. I love the show.
Thank you. That does it for this week, folks, and thanks to Barry for opening up his mind to help us figure out why he does what he does. Links are on our website at moneyneversleeps.ie, so check us out online and subscribe to our Money Never Sleeps newsletter as well. Also, thanks to Conan Brophy from Create Sound for mixing and editing this episode. Conan is an excellent media man to get in touch with when you're thinking about launching your own podcast. As for me, I'm the founding partner at Norio Ventures, and I'm an early-stage startup advisor and investor focused on fintech and digital assets. If you'd like to talk to me about your business, drop me a voicemail on moneyneversleeps.ie. Finally, till next time, thanks for listening. See ya!